It's like, in issue 339 of Thor.
Oh, that specific numbering.
I'm trying to show people how much I know to be superior than them. I don't think that.
Throw around the word superior and
yeah.
How's that gone for you?
It's gone really. What were we talking about?
Okay. Welcome to the FANtom Zone. 3 fans, 1 podcast, and a sea of comics.
Bam.
Snap, snap, snap.
Effortlessly did we get into that. This is going to be fun. I think we should talk about our first comic experiences.
Of course.
Because I really...
How are we going to have a comic book podcast without people knowing how we got into it in the first place?
Absolutely. And I feel like... So the cool thing about comic books, right, is that you can get into them at all ages because the stories are that good. Story is just infectious. But the people that really become hopeless fans are the people that when they were kids, it just like kind of, it just attached itself to them like
a seed was
parasite.
planted.
Yeah.
It's like the Harry Potter generation.
Absolutely.
Like you kind of missed that boat, but I mean, Kayla and I kind of grew.
I'm too young to have gotten into it.
It's the opposite of that. But Kayla and I grew up with that stuff. So,
yeah.
I mean, it is a part of who we are.
Let it
Which
be
is
known.
weird to say about a fictional universe. But, I mean.
Let it be known we did not make it one episode without Noah mentioning Harry Potter. I think that's
ding, ding, buzz.
telling. No, but it really does serve.
I'm sure there's Harry Potter comics. I'm going to find a way to talk about it more.
No, actually, are there not?
No.
That's almost surprising. Maybe it's probably J.K. Rowling.
They have illustrated books now, but I think that's going to be the closest. There's no word balloons, so
we'll just wait till she's dead, and then they'll do it.
How dare you?
Okay. Anyway, back on topic, but yeah. So I feel like for all of us, we had like really early formative experiences with comics. I guess I can go first.
Yeah. Let's just tell us.
Let's talk about me. We'll talk about me, and if we get to you guys, then it'll be great.
How much time is left?
Yeah, exactly.
We're done.
Yeah, like my turn's over. So I feel like a lot of 90s kids, the way I got into comics was they used to have these Marvel trading cards.
Masterpiece ones?
No. So they had the masterpieces, which were beautiful.
I love that.
I know. Just gorgeous. Joe Jusko, I think, was the original artist. Just absolutely gorgeous stuff. You can check his stuff out. We saw his book the other day.
Yes.
We got to get that. Anyway, for Christmas.
It's a Barnes & Noble exclusive. I'm not plugging Barnes & Noble. They didn't tell me to do this, but just
they
so you know.
need all the help they can get. But anyway, but no, they had these other trading cards, which were really... Noah's like slowly opening a water bottle. They had these trading cards that were really modeled off of like baseball trading cards, and they would have stats in the back and everything like that. And I think I was 9 years old, and I think what really got me into it is that just every single character looked so much different, but the storytelling and the character design. Like you would see
It was like uniformed, or what do you mean?
Well, no, sort of just the whole thing. So Wolverine, the name and the appearance, and just that set of things just told you so much about the character without knowing anything about the character. It was just this fantastic.
I didn't know these existed, so this is fascinating to listen to.
You know what's funny? It kills me that they don't bring them back. It kills me that there's not more.
I think that like the Magic generation kind of like there's no value in it when you can just buy an encyclopedia or just wiki the characters. I still have some of my Masterpiece cards. I mean,
yeah.
Fantastic. I mean, it's not the same thing, but the Masterpiece ones were just beautiful.
Absolutely. I think that maybe something about digital has taken away from sure. But there's still like a hoardy part of all of us that wants to have. Of course,
if you're a fan of comics, you have obsessive bones in your body.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You have too much of something.
Yeah.
Like somewhere.
Yeah.
In some box.
Yeah.
That you don't know is there.
In our case, like all over the apartment.
Yeah.
Just everywhere.
It's a little too much.
But yeah, so
was that your first comic experience?
That was my first.
Cards?
It got me into. It introduced me to just the idea of a superhero, because I think at that time there wasn't a predominant piece of animation. A few comic book movies were out. So the Batman movie was out. Superman had come out at that
I thought
point.
you were going to go with Adam West.
But yeah, no. Thank God.
That's very dated.
And it's really hurt. Oh, I get it. It was an old joke. Anyway,
and he finally got it.
Yeah. But I feel like that Batman movie in the 90s, as good as it was, it felt kind of standalone, and in a lot of ways it didn't launch this sort of like comic explosion in movies that was going to happen later on. So I think, you could be a kid and really not have a strong sense about like what characters or what superheroes were or whatever and for me, it was those comic book cards.
Even Superman, though? I mean, because Superman kind of predates the Batman one.
No, absolutely. But just on the time period. So I think those end up coming out in the late 70s. I was born in 83. Mm-hmm. So those movies were kind of gone from theaters. And whereas like the first superhero thing I saw, I think in terms of movies or media like that was Batman. But the difference
he doesn't seem very superhero-like anyway.
Exactly. And that movie, that Michael Keaton movie, is so set to be like it feels dark and gothic. So I didn't get a sense of superheroes from that. I got a sense of like this whole larger interconnected set of, this plurality of characters from those comic cards. Mm-hmm. And that's also going to play into like why I got into my favorite comic book character. We'll talk about that later. But I will say they got me to, there are things you can buy that tell the story of these characters.
Mm-hmm. Kind of open up the world for you.
And those things are comics. And my first comic, just trivia, New Warriors number 18. And that from then on, from then on, like almost every day, I begged to buy a comic book.
When you fall
They
hard.
were only like 5 cents though.
You could, they would give them free when you bought a bag of wheat. If you, he
came in with the old jab.
I know. Well, I feel like I had a good comeback.
I mean,
fine.
they were less expensive in the 90s.
They were startlingly less expensive. You know what I remember? The price? I want to guess how much they cost.
$2.99.
No, way less. So I'm older than you even thought.
$1.50?
80 cents.
$1.25 is what I remember as the price.
How much were trades?
They didn't have them. They didn't exist.
Oh, that's true.
Literally,
they didn't come out till
they existed in some faraway sense, but like I remember $1.25 for a comic, 5 cents for bubble gum. And if you wanted to get a buggy whip, that would cut on. Okay. So anyway, that's my first experience.
You mean a thing to whip horses?
I only know it as an old reference. I could have said a bottle of ether, but that would have been ominous. So
the world is black and white.
So who would like to know? Do you want to do your first experience with comics? What hooked you?
So, I mean, mine's a little different than yours. It was an actual comic book. I knew of the movies.
You're an actual comic book.
Yeah. And you're welcome for allowing you to be on here.
Yeah.
Ouch.
I'm kidding.
No,
I mean, my first one, my dad is in the military. Well, he's retired now, but he would always, stop by the PX or the BX, depending on what, branch your father or you are in. Anyway, they always had like these little spinners of, comics, and they were just single issues. They didn't mean anything. They were just a bunch of random ones. And he'd always just pick them up and give them to me. And I was always like, okay, thanks for this magazine. And,
magazine.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to reading Harry Potter or Twilight, whatever it was.
I like that you're very sophisticated. And you're like, thank you for this comic rag, Father, but I'm going to go back to my novel that I read.
Yeah, yes, that was aimed at children because I was a child.
You were, I believe, smoking a pipe at the time.
No, I had to hide in my closet and read Harry Potter.
Oh, that's right.
So it meant a lot to me. Anyway, so I just had these stacks of comics, and my older brother, which is about 5 years older than me, he started reading Daredevil. And, I was sitting there and I saw him reading it, and I was like, that artwork is really cool, because a lot of it was black and white, and Daredevil would be the only thing in color, or, Elektra or something that was happening would be the only thing in color, and I thought it was really striking.
That's awesome.
This is Frank Miller stuff, I believe.
I think so.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. It was so long ago that I wouldn't be able to really tell you what issue it was, and I was like, comics have good artwork in it. And
there are listeners right now pushing up their glasses like, well, I believe it was the work of Frank Miller in issues 296 to 300.
From what I can recall from the artwork, it definitely sounds like it probably was Frank Miller. I mean, No, and that I was like, oh, this seems interesting. So my brother would always go to the comic shop like on a Friday, which is a little weird because comics come out on Wednesday. But anyway, so we would go, and I remember looking at the comics, and to this day, listeners, if you can help me, I can't remember what issue of Fantastic Four this was, but it was all silver. It kind of had like an iridescent to it whenever you would move it in the light. There's a spiral with the middle, like a red little circle in the middle, and it just had all the characters like Doctor Doom and all the Fantastic Four.
I remember it.
Yeah, I don't know what issue it was. I tried to Google it when I was thinking about what I was going to talk about, and I couldn't find it, and it drives me crazy. But because I want it again, and I had it for years.
And the mission of this podcast now, we are going to find the issue.
Anyway, it's probably not even a good issue, but I just remember that was the first comic I ever bought myself with my dad's money, but for myself, and like actually read it, and then would steal my brother's comics and start reading those.
I think it's interesting that both of you guys kind of were drawn in by like the visual aspect.
Yes.
You know, it was very much like the artwork is amazing. I like the colors. I want to know more.
Yeah, and I think that might have been the driving, because I knew books had words, comics had pictures, or at the time I thought they were just magazines and kind of pointless, and I didn't care about it. But yeah, I mean, once you actually start reading it, you're like, oh, there's a story. Like there's words in here. Like, and
absolutely,
because I was a big reader, and I thought comics were for people that didn't like to read, and I was wrong.
And aren't you glad?
Yes, very, very glad, because I'm broke now because having so many comics.
As that happens, as we do.
Can I just ask real quick? And did comics get anybody into reading?
No, I personally, I was a reader before comics.
Yeah, same.
Comics got me into reading. I was not interested in reading at all.
What did you do with your time?
I played outside like a real youngin. I was mostly barefoot on a raft. I was swinging a
Huckleberry
possum.
Finn?
Yeah.
Like, what
Which ironically is a book reference. Anyway, so but in all sincerity, I was like a really slow reader. You remember the reading programs that they would have when you're in kindergarten? You're in different like color
kindergarten,
units.
They already knew you were a bad reader?
No, that's when we discovered it.
Oh.
And everybody else was rocketing towards, like, we're doing all these, like, in the advanced colors, like the puce and the periwinkle and all those, and I was still in, like, light yellow or whatever it is. And I don't know if anybody's worried about me, but I just remember being like, I don't know if I can read good. And then I got into comic books, and it was a complete reversal.
Yeah.
Words are awesome.
Wow, so
It's just like reading when a lot of people are like, oh, I don't like to read, or like, I don't like comics. It's like, well, maybe you should find something that you like.
Yeah.
Because there's something for everybody. I mean, everybody is a reader when they find something they like.
I had a buddy who was,
and that was reading Rainbow Plug.
Yeah. I had a buddy who was like, of course comic books help you learn to, like, expand your vocabulary in a young way. Like, what other kid knows what uncanny is who hasn't read comics or whatever?
I still don't know what it means to this day.
This means weird.
Okay.
It's just a great word for weird. Well, but the weird X-Men definitely worse. So I'm glad they went with uncanny.
A step down from Noah's, like, my first introduction to comic books was comic books, guys. Mine was, but in true to myself, was a video game on the old Super Nintendo, the Avengers game. I don't remember what it was called, but me and my sister would play it. And I would always be Captain America, spam that shield throwing button. She would alternate between Hawkeye and Iron Man. And again, I didn't know that these characters were based off of, like, comic book characters, that they had decades of history behind them. I was just like, oh, I like Captain America.
You just thought it was a game.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was kind of my first introduction into superheroes, but it wasn't until Teen Titans animated show on Cartoon Network that I kind of knew that these characters had histories and context within the comic books. And it was fan fiction from Teen Titans.
Interesting.
That kind of led me to the comic book world because I was obsessed with the character of Robin. And when I was looking at the fan fiction, they would call him Dick Grayson. And I was like, his name is Robin. Who is this person?
This imposter.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was like, Dick Grayson, you know, like Googling it on the old dial-up. And I was way behind on technology, guys. I didn't get a smartphone until, like, college.
This was like 2 years ago.
But yeah, so when I don't know, that was just kind of the lead in.
So that to the show, so the game kind of introduced like, oh,
superheroes.
This was your first interaction, but you didn't know that they were like this big universe.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Teen Titans kind of, I got more curious. I started reading about it, fan fiction, but still.
Which you're out nerding the two of us with that. For that.
I know. And even saying this out loud is kind of a bit of it's flustering.
This is like confessional. This is good. I like it.
But yeah.
There's only like 10,000 people listening to it. There's like nobody right now at this point.
But yeah, Dick Grayson, I knew that, there's more than one Robin, and then that kind of, again, opened up the entire world of comic books.
Right from the beginning, you're like, Robin was like your...
Exactly. So, lo and behold, the fact that Dick Grayson is still my favorite character to this day, which we'll be talking about later. It's kind of funny.
Do you know the video game she's talking about?
I don't. I think I didn't play it. I played the X-Men one a lot.
Oh, so it's very similar.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure they came out at the same time, maybe. But the same graphics. I mean,
it's
it all looks like shit now.
They're both but the game you're talking about, the X-Men game, is awesome. That Avengers game, I think I could be wrong, but I think one of the reasons you got into it is because of that announcer's voice.
It's true. Game. Like at the start of the stage, and every time
you played Captain America. That can get kids to do anything, like eat your broccoli.
It definitely felt like a call to action. Maybe that was when I first felt like a superhero, and then I just never let that go.
Yeah.
And that game had at the time, like the obscure character Vision.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was
I don't remember. I don't remember Vision, but
you could play Iron Man, Hawkeye, Captain America, and Vision, and then they had also
I was like,
cameos.
that's it. That's a terrible.
You could only get
choices.
It really wasn't. I bet you it was some weird like licensing thing, like why they had to pick.
Wait,
those
so
characters.
that was the only ones you could?
You could pick those 4, and then they had a bunch of cameos from characters like Submariner. And
but you could never
Man.
play them.
No, they would either be cameo, and then the Wasp.
Weird.
The Wasp appeared as a character that would like. Attach herself to you, like almost like having the touching the star in Mario or whatever.
Like Autobots and their little tiny mini bots.
But they had really good villain cameos, and it was just it was really cool. I totally can see why that like got you. I totally get it. Yeah,
that's interesting. I didn't know it was just that little tiny.
Oh yeah.
Tiny bit of characters.
You're lucky you got 4 at that point.
I mean, I guess. But then the X-Men one, I mean, it had a whole roster.
You had like
you had the
6
whole,
to 8.
I mean, you had the original.
Oh, you so missed that because the thing about that is that they had the huge arcade.
Yeah,
where it was like a wraparound and 6 people could play and spend their parents' money.
Wow,
it was great. I always played Beast.
And
Beast is my favorite.
What's interesting about this too, I think, is that like it shows you back in those days how superheroes weren't just everywhere. Yeah. You had to there were these special little outlets where you could kind of get into them, and that's, I think, a really good example of it.
So it was like more of a niche thing instead of mainstream.
Yeah, back when you had to have some heart, like comic books.
So one thing I did want to ask you guys, did you get made fun of or bullied because you like comics, or was this kind of past the point that it didn't really matter? Or
I got a story.
Of course you do.
So I'll bridge it, and it's not. It was just this moment where it hit me all at once, like, oh, this is nerdy, because you don't know that originally, and all through elementary school, like I think. So if I got into them at 9th grade, and it was older kids in my neighborhood that got me into them, I didn't know they were dorks.
Those neighborhood kids, you never know what clique they're in until you see them in school.
They were really cool, and they introduced me to were trading those cards and got me into it and everything like that. So by this time, I'm it's 6th grade, and we're on a field trip. So there's going to be a long bus ride, and it's the first. By the way, I'm like a year and a half into a very serious meth-like comic book addiction. So I'm like, I had this guy, Matt Ramey, was a friend of mine at the time. And I was like, oh, he's cool. And I'm going to bring my comics and we're going to read them together and everything like that. And I had him in my backpack. Yeah, I know. It's very cute. And I was like, we're sitting next to each other on the bus, and I was like, and I like basically pulled him out like, oh, look what we get to read and we can talk about it and stuff like that. And, like you can see in somebody's face, just repellent disinterest.
Yeah,
just like that was exactly, and it just hit me It was like the opposite of getting bit by a radioactive spider. It was like
just a regular venomous spider. That just...
yeah, exactly. I've got the power to shake and piss, and I was just fully deflated.
Smell colors.
And from then on, I kind of realized, oh, you can't. People don't. This isn't cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it's mainly because a lot of times you either have this one family member or friend that introduces you to it, and you don't realize that, like, oh, not everybody's doing this, or like, oh, this person's not cool.
Yeah.
Like, but am I not cool? Like, it's just this weird, like, reflective thing.
I think it's, who you surround yourself with. If you're surrounded by other people that enjoy the same things, of course, you're not going to feel as isolated. It doesn't feel like such a taboo to like it. I had my sister growing up, and we would do and share everything. So if I liked comic book stuff, I'd be like, hey, look at this. Or like anything nerdy. Harry Potter. Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, fourth time Harry Potter was referenced.
Okay, oh, man, I need to work on that.
No, it's great. I love it. Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know where I stand with what is better or worse, but I there's something that you can't have now with comics, which is because it was so nerdy, there was a kind of personal feeling.
Like it was exclusive to you.
And that it was like your secret, even if you had some other friends, it was like, oh, you couldn't wear the t-shirt in, high school, like your Wolverine t-shirt or like the one you made, right? Out of like, okay, I've said too much. Anyway, no, but you know what I mean? Like, so now the only thing I feel bad for like kids that are getting into comics now is that it's hard to make that as personal.
I don't know. I feel like it's not diluting to include more and more people. Sure. And in fact, there's like more content and more people to talk about these cool characters and stories that you love.
I think it kind of goes both ways. Like, right? I mean, it is good that almost everybody knows about superheroes, or like there is this kind of collective, no, we all like this thing, or like there's a bigger community now. Like, but I mean, football. Back then, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I don't even like football, but I just no. But when I talk to like, it was like it's the like America's pastime. Like that's I think why people that are into it, they can kind of like you can just walk up to a stranger at work and be like, oh, you see the Ravens game or whatever.
Oh yeah, I mean you could be like, did you see the Venom movie?
Yeah.
There's usually a huge debate that erupts because everybody has very strict opinions on these things,
which we will get to.
And I think now is a good time for people to kind of get to know us a little bit more and kind of go over our favorite characters, which is really hard to decide which one. Maybe not for Kayla.
Was it?
Well, before we get into it, was this... So this was the easiest, most obvious. I gotta go with this character.
I agree. Mine was pretty obvious.
I mean...
And I knew who you were going to choose, so you can't say that it wasn't obvious for you too.
I'm trying to be mysterious, guys. Jeez, have some complexity.
It's the illusion.
Don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. He knew.
But it does make sense because of you like a number of characters in different capacities and stuff. That.
I mean, I like them in different ways, and I'll get into that whenever I talk about like my character, how I love them. I love them.
Who's your character?
You're right.
Jared's going first
because right now it's my turn to do my favorite character, which is Thor, the mighty Thor. I'm going to begin a 9-part series on Thor. Most of the episodes are going to be...
is.
Okay, damn it. But we're going to continue later. But, okay, so I'll just do a brief character summary, just for if you don't have a sense of who Thor is, if you don't like any of the movies, or if you've been living under a rock, or you're just hateful as a person.
Hey, we're trying to be inclusive, okay? Don't exclude a group of people.
I'm sorry. So if you don't know Thor is, fuck you. Okay, anyway, let's go.
Damn.
Will we edit that out?
I'm going to probably edit.
That's fine. So I should say way more. Okay, no. Okay. So here's the character summary. Thor is the Norse god of thunder and one of the most powerful heroes in comics. A founding member of the Avengers, Thor is most known for his main weapon, a magical indestructible hammer called Mjolnir.
I like how you pronounce that.
Thank you. Thor's main powers include his ability to command the elements, usually manifesting through lightning and thunder, and his godly physical attributes. He is one of the strongest characters in the Marvel Universe, and definitely stronger than all of the DC characters. He defends...
You picking a fight.
I know. He defends all the 9 worlds of the Norse cosmology, including Midgard, which is Earth, from danger, evil, and all that awful stuff. So that's Thor. Yeah. That's basically who he is. First experience with the character. Thor 440. That's the first Thor comic I read. And actually, I'll go back a little bit. Those comic cards I was telling you about. Mm-hmm. So I'm 9 years old. So what character am I the most interested in? By far the one that just had the highest stats on the back.
That is a very simple way of determining.
A little bar graph. And it was like, oh, he's maxed out.
Exactly, because
he's obviously the best.
So it was, if I can remember, strength, speed, agility, stamina, durability, and intelligence. If I can remember. So that was it.
Mm-hmm. And it's not like you have that memorized.
And Thor had the most, like 7. So it was like, well, he's the best, and that makes me the best person in the room. Because you know when you're like a kid with those, like everybody's like, I'm going to be this character. Like when you're even when you're not playing pretend, you're still like, you pick an avatar, like, you know, whatever it is, like I'm Thor and you're Wolverine and you're whatever stupid 90s character. Oh, there's so many bad ones. Anyway, you're the thing that Rob Liefeld created. Ugh. Okay. So Thor character was great, like the comic card or whatever. And then I go out and get the Thor comic that was on the stands, which was really apropos for now because Thor wasn't in the comic because he had been replaced by a mortal loser, kind of, Eric Masterson. Yeah. So, and it's really funny because now in Thor comics, up until recently, Thor had been replaced by Jane Foster, and all these Thor fans lost their mind and hated it. Yeah, my esteemed co-host, a big fan of Lady Thor. I appreciate it too.
She's a badass.
She's great. Any point being is that this has happened before, and that was what was going on when I started reading Thor comics. And this particular issue was every replacement Thor, so Beta Ray Bill, Eric Masterson Thor, and a future Thor named Dargo Katar, deep cut. We're all together in a group of called the Thor Corps. The 90s were not very original. Yeah.
It rhymes. It's good.
And also the Green Lantern Corps. So like, they all have hammers.
Okay.
And they're fighting a character who's a kind of low-rent Kang the Conqueror named Zarko the Tomorrow Man. And he's bringing all of the Thor villains from the time stream to fight these 3 amateur replacement Thors. Now, as silly as that sounds, it was an awesome introduction to the character. Mm-hmm. Because it's just all these, and you're like, oh, there's this whole world. And Thor comics end up being weirdly like bigger than life and cosmic and, you know, earth shattering.
Space operas.
Absolutely. So it was, seriously, at 9, I had never read anything like that. And then to me, there wasn't a movie. So I was just absolutely sucked in. Yeah. So that was like the main thing. I got more to say about the God of Thunder.
I mean, it's your favorite character, I'd hope.
It's so annoying how much I love this character.
So is there something that you don't like about the character? Like something that, even though you love them so much,
sure.
but you just get really irritated, aside from Jane?
There's not. No, I don't even dislike Jane. But there's nothing about the character that I don't like. I have nothing but like, it's like asking somebody who's Christian, like, is there anything about Jesus you're not into? It's that bad.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's that bad. Which I'll get into in a little bit. But
no, you won't.
Yeah, but no, not that. I mean, anyway, you'll see. But there's certainly things about the depiction that I don't like sometimes. Mm-hmm. So they have a tendency when Thor's in a group setting, because for comedy sort of value, which is not just in like the movies recently, really in I'd say at least the mid 80s on, it's been really easy to write Thor as this kind of like goofy fish out of water duncy character. Mm-hmm. Because I mean, I think some of the jokes just come a little easier and it's also, it's just going to be in a team book, it's just going to be kind of a 2-dimensional version or whatever. So yeah.
Do you think that's because he is a god on man's land? So I don't think that he would know.
The disconnect there is kind of a natural thing.
The problem, of course,
like he hung up his hammer and the second one or whatever.
Exactly. And those are great. Those moments are awesome. I think the issue is that at the same time, while that's happening, in the pages of his own comics, he doesn't read that way. So there's this kind of disconnect. He ends up being this kind of like, desperate, almost Shakespearean character with all this inner monologue and turmoil and responsibility. And then you go to the Avengers sometimes, And he's like,
kind of slapstick.
I need to drink. He's just trying to drink beer and like, forsooth, I need a turkey or whatever, which is not the most. But anyway, so you
don't like it when they characterize him kind of dumbed down a bit, I guess.
And I think almost nobody likes their favorite character to kind of be reduced that way, even if that's very common.
Yeah, that's true. But then you get the big splash pages where like he saves the day at the end.
And can I just say, that's to me, you describe the character simply, and it's hard to imagine how anybody doesn't like it, because he's a Viking god who smashes giants with a hammer, and there's lightning. I don't know.
I love Thor, and I think my favorite Thor is when he's kind of like the antithesis of toxic masculinity. You know, like he is this very like muscular man, but he also has that softer side, and I love
absolutely
when in the comics or in the movies.
That's what I think. That's why I like Jason Aaron's run a lot, because there's literally a point in that comic where you see baby Thor, not literally baby, but before he had Mjolnir, and then current Thor, and then old Thor, and you see all his different kind of transitions, and you see him kind of being this, douchey bro, like sleeping with women on all the realms, and then the middle Thor,
really just trying to be worthy. That early,
kind of. I mean, it's a little weird that like he'll go and like sleep with 5-7 women, and then go back to the vault where Mjolnir is, and he tries to pick it up. And he's like, "Oh, I'm not worthy."
Yeah, it's perfect because he's stupid. Because he's young.
That's right. Yeah, that's what I like that. And then you get to see the middle Thor, which is in the Avengers now, and then you get to see, the perfect Thor, and then you get to see old Thor with all his daughters and stuff like that. And I think it's great.
No, and to give some context, Noah mentioned Jason Aaron. Jason Aaron is the current writer on Thor. He's been doing it since 2014 at least. We'll have to go back check. Right. But he, I think, he's one of the best already Thor writers ever. It's a new kind of Thor renaissance in a certain way. But another thing I really love about the character is the settings. So, you get 9 worlds, technically 10 worlds now, whatever. Anyway, 9 worlds and then maybe one other, with Thor. And it's really fantastic because it feels like you get, obviously Thor on Earth, but you also get Thor in Asgard, like the Asgard itself, and he gets to fight all of the characters associated with that mythology. And then you have basically any Dungeons and Dragons looking fiery land of Muspelheim.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Oh my.
The icy realm of Niflheim, Nidlavir with the door. You get it. It feels
Stop
like
name dropping.
Yeah. It feels like, you're right. I was hanging out Nidvalir, don't worry. But it feels like this expansive sort of cosmology. And I just like one of the coolest things about that is that a good Thor story, I think, ends up looking, and this is something I think they haven't fully explored in the movies yet, more like a Lord of the Rings style fantasy than maybe like a Superman sort of thing.
Honestly, that's why I'm drawn to Thor too. Did you were you fond of mythology before?
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's something weird about the Norse gods too, because they end up being more demigod-like in a lot of ways, like the way that they're written. So in Greek mythology, the gods end up being causal principles for how the world works. Whereas
don't bash Greek mythology.
No, I love it. Absolutely. But Thor is much more an adventurous sort of character in Norse mythology, and I don't know how much he explains natural phenomena. He does a little bit, but for the most part, it's just him beating the crap out of stuff and like getting mad at Loki for tricking him and wearing a dress sometimes. You look it up, but
Thor?
Yeah. There's a wedding scene where he's got to get his hammer back. And so he pretends to be a bride. And I guess,
how progressive.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And they were mad that Jane became Thor.
and I think that the last thing I'll say, just like in terms of like what I really love about this character, is the whole concept is really interesting in terms of, I mentioned he's Jesus-y in a way. And the mythology paints that picture, and I think Marvel, and I'll explain, but Marvel's kind of translated this a little bit too, because Thor is the son of Odin, the Sky Father, right? But his mother, even though in he's raised sort of by this Frigga character from, in the movies, and that's in the comics too, but he's the biological son of the Earth goddess. In Norse mythology, it's Jord.
That's not.
Well, it's what are you going to do? Scandinavians. So Marvel has a tendency just to bridge all their Earth goddesses into Gaia, but and so Thor ends up being the son of the sky and the Earth, and he's symbolized by lightning, which is sort of the point at which the Earth meets the sky. And
that's so beautiful.
It really is pretty, and it ends up being this kind of like salvational character in a way, because he's both this fighter of giants and this sort of terrible, angry, turbulent character, but he's also associated with like fertility and just really weird. My name, McCorkle, translates to son of Thor's kettle. I don't know.
No, it doesn't.
It really does.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this was preordained.
Oh, it gets weirder. Journey into Mystery number 83 is where Thor appears for the first time. So Journey into Mystery, J.M. Jered McCorkle, and I was born in 1983. It's super weird. I know this is.
I wouldn't know if you're lying though. So
no, this is all. We'll go back and check the tape. But either
Google
way,
this right now.
Either way, he ends up being a really interesting character in that way, where he's both this out of sort of transcendent character from the heavens that sort of comes down and is supposed to be salvational, but he's also drawn to the or connected to the earth and has to defend it. And so what's really cool in Thor comics is you get this connection between the two. And then I guess I can't not mention this. I'm sure we will. When you get Thor,
Loki,
you also get
Loki.
Absolutely.
I would definitely say I'm more of a Loki fan than Thor, but you can't have one and not the other.
They're the best together.
So good, and it's this weird comic book and mythology. If anything, the mythology has it almost all the way through, but in Marvel Comics, really since Tom Hiddleston blew it out of the water, now
great.
he
gave that character kind of new life.
So much. Especially in terms of just, you kind of see him as almost a protagonist. But
he's
the
just
idea,
sympathetic villain.
Yeah, and they end up being this cool, like, heroic yin-yang, where you have this dumb, action-oriented, direct, noble character was exemplified by strength and doing the right thing, but kind of dumb, and if not stupid, at least like thick and not having subtlety. And then you have this opposite who is mischievous and probably complex in his motivations, but has a sense of what the future is going to be and all that kind of stuff,
or how he wants it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. We could do a whole Loki episode, but I will say I think really
down
right now.
Number 2, no, but I think what's great about Loki is that I don't think he knows what he wants. I think most of the time he's deep away from just, Thor is good and Loki's sort of bad or at least mischievous. I think Thor is direct and simple, and Loki ends up being kind of...
I think that proves that too with Loki always protecting his mother, or his adoptive mother.
Yeah.
Even in Jason Aaron's run, there's one part, spoiler alert, when he stabs her and she gets poisoned because of whatever poison is on there, and for like a whole trade you think that she's dead or dying, and then you see this weird interaction between her and Loki, and he's like, if I wanted to kill you, I could have killed you. Did you not think that? Why would I kill you?
It's a fantastic moment, because he only did that to prevent her from being assassinated.
Exactly. Like he was like, I'm going to assassinate you, but fake it. That way you're not assassinated. It's good. It's great.
So, so Thor is great. And I really feel like we could just skip y'all's characters because no, I'm just playing. But yeah, so Thor's my favorite character. I feel like, he's awesome. Yeah, and now we'll do we'll do more on later, but okay,
maybe.
Yeah, so
I think we got his entire history just now. So.
There's so much more. I
learned a lot.
Yeah, I didn't even get into Seth, the serpent god of death. Okay, it doesn't matter. Okay,
that's such a cute name, Seth.
I know. Yeah. It was going to be Brent, the serpent god of evil, but anyway. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to my co-host, Kayla.
Alrighty.
Tell us about your favorite character.
Guess who my favorite character is? It's Dick Grayson.
Rick.
No. Oh my gosh, you went there. No. Okay, well, maybe that's why I chose Dick Grayson. Not only is he my favorite, but he's apparently dead. Not really, but Rick Grayson has taken his place. Anyway, in memoriam, we'll talk about Dick Grayson.
Fitting.
I'll try not to talk about him every episode. Born Richard John Grayson. Appeared in Detective Comics, 1940. So he's been around for almost 80 years. He appeared about 1 year after Batman. I didn't know this, really, that he's basically almost been there from the beginning. The motivations of the authors at the time were to kind of soften Batman up. Even after a year, I guess it was a little too dark and gritty
which
for
is
the
weird,
children.
Which is weird because when you read it, it's like, this is ridiculous.
Exactly. It was kind of hokey. Yeah. But yeah, he was introduced to kind of like soften Batman up. Was Robin for about 44 years, then became Nightwing, Teen Titans, yada, yada, yada. Which was my introduction into Dick Grayson, was that, like I mentioned earlier, it was like the animated Teen Titans show that was on Cartoon Network.
Which is a fantastic show.
Obsessed.
It's so
they
good.
need to bring it back. Young Justice is back. Let's bring back Teen Titans.
That's true, yeah. I mean, I don't know how it would be with both of those going. And that's a completely different discussion.
I'm going to say Young Justice all the way. I love
Young Justice too, but I feel like that Teen Titans. Anyway,
yeah.
Teen Titans was important to me. I wanted more. I was such a reader, so I went online and started looking at fan fiction, like I said. They started calling him Dick Grayson. I was very curious. I kind of wikied who this Dick Grayson was. Found out that there was more than one Robin.
Yeah.
Then fell into that black hole. I then just entered comics. I picked up a general Batman comic. I think it might have been around Battle for the Cow, like a little bit after, and then I went back.
So good.
I love Battle for the Cow.
So
but it had like all of the Robins there, and that was important to me because I was like, who are these people? I want to know who each of them are individually.
Yeah.
And I mean, it just so happens that after learning more and more about the different Robins, that Dick Grayson still was my favorite. And I think it was because in his initial introduction, this character was meant to soften Batman up, to kind of like bring light into the detective comics. And he's kind of never, at least my favorite Dick Grayson's never lost that aspect.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, he has always, out of all of them, he's definitely been kind of the more upbeat.
Yeah, exactly. I like him in that role. I love all of the Robins, but I'm so partial.
All of them we love.
Okay, I don't care for Damien. I feel like that was a meme.
That's I love Damien.
It is funny.
I have an order, but
to your point about Dick Grayson being a Robin that brings light into the darkness, Damien, like him or not, is one of the only characters that even Batman's like, okay, this is weird.
Maybe a little too dark.
Maybe we should go to the park.
But I mean, now he's like best friends with Superman's son, and it's so
that was great. Nice.
It's so cool
unto itself. I mean, we could talk about that all day because it's great. But
well, and then like when he became Nightwing, like he matured from this cute little kid, full of light, bouncing around. Got angry, and I really liked that part of him too. The fact that he wasn't just this one-dimensional, bright, like chipper, putty guy.
Wearing no pants.
Yeah. Oh gosh, those bejeweled panties. But like around the transition time before Jason was killed.
Transition time being
from Robin to Nightwing.
Okay, not a man to a woman or something. Okay,
around 1984, became Nightwing. He was still very, very angry at Bruce. Still an important part of his story. And then after that, after he kind of got that distance, became his own superhero. Became Batman's lieutenant almost. He's kind of like I call him like the mom Robin of all of them. Like he's kind of like
he always does have like a level head, and like he's naturally always the leader anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like he's the oldest, and I feel like he has, I don't know, I guess he's a little bit more in touch with his emotions in a way than the other Robins are.
He's the most like graduated and successful in that respect.
Yeah, exactly. I feel more well-rounded.
Yeah.
Worked through a lot of his issues. Still has some. But what I love about Dick Grayson too is that he has unique relationships that are expanded, I guess, because of the age of the character with all of the different members of the Bat family. And I have boxes and boxes of Bat fam comics, man. Those are my love.
I mean, those comics are great because sometimes that's the only way you can know those characters.
Yeah, exactly. My favorite part about characters in general is how they interact with other characters, the relationships that they build. So like his relationship with Bruce is always complicated. With Damien, obviously he's the one that made Damien Robin after Bruce vanished. Thought to be dead.
That was a really cool kind of interaction though. Like you had Dick as Batman, and then you had Damien as Robin.
Well, and then like Tim in the middle, like being stripped of his mantle. I love all of that interactions between the brothers.
Is this when Tim becomes Red Robin?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
and his relationship with Jason, they were obviously really close. Jason was killed. He had to deal with that. And the readers got to kind of deal with their grief with Dick. Because obviously Bruce doesn't really grieve like a normal person. No.
Not in the least.
No. And then
you don't want to really read about Batman with a box of tissues. You know what I mean?
Like, I don't know. I mean, obviously not, because that's not who Bruce Wayne is. But I have lots to say about the writers' obsession with making him the most miserable person in the DC universe. Yeah, I mean, I'm so over the man pain that they inflict on him constantly.
There is a point where it does kind of get a little much, because you could see that he hasn't dealt with some type of tragedy or something, and he's progressively beating more and more people's faces in. And it's just like, oh, okay.
Well, that's where the spin the wheel. Which Robin dies this.
Exactly. And yet, usually when the spiral happens, then it's like, oh, Batman doesn't die. Which Robin's gonna die now?
To give him man pain.
And he's been through a lot. You have to, like, if he went to a therapist, I feel like the therapist would just read everything that happened to him and be like, "So are you dressing up like a bat and punching people?" Because that happens.
I think there's an instance where Harley Quinn does kind of analyze him.
Yeah,
and I can't remember what medium it was, or if it was the TV show or the comic, but I just remember her being like, "Oh, you're terrifying. Like, you have a lot of issues."
Yeah.
And even for Harley saying that, she's super intelligent, but for her to say that is just, I mean, he has some freaking issues.
And he's basically the father figure to Dick Grayson, which is kind of insane, because, like, Dick turns out pretty healthy.
I mean, that's
relative.
The stem of a lot of his anger was the whole, like, I didn't want to be like him. But then, like, with the distance, coming to respect the person that Bruce is, still kind of craving and seeing him in that capacity, like that father-like role, even if he's like, man, I didn't want to be exactly like that. And he's not. But yeah, I mean, in general, my other faves, like, not just the Bat family, but like Daredevil or Loki, I don't know if I could stand to read about them in an isolated capacity as long as I can with Dick. Like, you know.
That's interesting. I mean, I think that there's a lot of people, like, so on the Avengers board that I'll frequent every once in a while, you can tell that their favorite characters are some of, like, maybe Quicksilver or Scarlet Witch, but I don't think they want to read them. They like them in that ensemble thing. They like their character in this larger world.
Well, I think that goes back to kind of what you were saying. So with Thor, they kind of dumb them down.
Yeah.
And then I think with some of those characters, when they're in an ensemble type piece, they're kind of lifted up.
Absolutely.
Or they're better in those type of things. Because, I mean, that's pretty true. There's some characters where I'm like, you're boring. Like, by yourself.
Outside of a context.
Yeah, that's kind of like Cyborg. Like, I can't read Cyborg by himself.
Yeah.
But I love Cyborg.
I think that's why it was pretty easy to choose, like, and why Dick Grayson has, like, maintained his number one spot in my heart for so long was he was the only comic book character that I found that I could read him in any capacity, whether it was in the Nightwing comics. I followed him to Grayson. I stuck it through, and the art in that is so beautiful.
It is good. It is good.
You know, but I do love him best when he's interacting with members of his family, but he has been the only superhero consistently that I can read outside of that context. With, again, my other favorites, Loki and Daredevil. I feel like their ensemble is what makes them so great. And I think the same could be said of Dick, but in a personal choice, I love him regardless.
Is there anything that you, like I asked Jered, is there anything that you just don't like about the character, like, no matter what?
I don't know. I don't feel
just
like
can't get over it.
If you love them that much, you accept them, flaws and all, and that's what makes them great. You know, like, he's
so you
obviously
accept that his name is Rick now?
No, and that's not him. He has amnesia, sir. But, no, I mean, obviously, my favorite iterations of Dick Grayson are when he maintains kind of the light. Like, he brings the light into the Bat family. I love Jason Todd just as he is. Tim Drake is my second favorite Robin for multiple reasons. But they don't bring that lightheartedness and, you know, just like breath of fresh air that Dick Grayson does. And I feel at his best, that's how I like him. Like, I acknowledge the fact that he was very angry and is very angry in certain, like, issues.
Well, rightfully so.
Yeah, exactly. That's not my favorite version of him because I don't think that's his best self. So if I have to choose, like, a Dick Grayson that I didn't like, it would be, you know, like,
kind of leaning towards the Batman.
Yeah, exactly.
Attitude.
Exactly.
I mean, I think he's fascinating for a lot of reasons. I mean, one thing, and like, I don't know if you'll agree with this or not, but, like, I think he's one of the first sort of characters in comics there's a lot of firsts with him, right? Where he ends up being like an effective character evolution. Because it's so often in comics where
they're kind of in limbo for age-wise.
Absolutely. Yeah. Or they'll develop a character in a story, and then when the next writer comes on board, it's kind of like back to square one. Whereas Dick moved from being this completely dependent, like a young childlike character, and he really grows up. And
the boy wonder to Nightwing.
Absolutely, to Nightwing. And when people write Nightwing now, they write him as Nightwing. They don't like, well, we got to...
He's Robin again.
Yeah, we gotta get him short pants.
Because they've kind of gone back and forth with like Tim and stuff like that. I mean, Damien's always Robin now, but like Tim has, especially in Detective Comics.
Oh, I mean,
it's been kind of back and forth. But Nightwing, you don't. Usually don't go back. You change him in a weird way, but you don't go back to Robin with him.
Yeah, I mean, you can... I mean, I'm trying to think. There's some other characters, too. I think DC's actually probably done it a little bit better because DC's had a longer history with sidekicks. So they've had that. Like, so obviously Wally West grew up, things like that. Roy Harper grew up, things like that. But I think Dick really paved the way there.
I think also how well respected he is outside of the Bat family. I can't remember which one it is. I think it might be around Infinite Crisis or Final Crisis. When I can't remember who's talking, but he's up there with Superman in terms of like Justice League respect.
Yeah.
I feel like
I think that might have been Final Crisis.
Yeah, okay.
Well, there's a moment in Infinite Crisis that's very similar to that too. So and it would make sense, but I think it's Batman talking about how like people will actually follow
Dick Grayson.
Dick. He's actually I mean, just the combination of those two is interesting because like Batman wants to control he's like, how do I become a symbol?
A bit of a control freak, you would say.
Yeah, whereas you get the sense with Dick, he's just trying to be a good person and fight the good fight in this world of darkness. And not just like, I'm going to become the knight.
I just like... He's kind of like the soul of not only the Bat family, but the transcendence of like, he's just a really good person and that people outside of his own comic, the Bat Family's comics, Justice League itself, just kind of acknowledge the fact that.
Yeah, and I think like he's important to that too, because if something was to happen to Batman, which it has, he would be the one, no matter what, to make sure the family's taken okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Or taken care of and taken okay. They are taken okay with him dead.
When you were talking about how he's like the mom character, I've never thought about that before, but it's so true.
Have you seen the disco outfit?
No! Disco wing.
It makes so much sense, because if you're one of the younger members of the Bat family, and you're basically still a kid, and now you're like, I want to ask so and so to prom. Are you go? Well, let me go talk to my dad. Well, he's busy being the knight, so I guess maybe who's this approachable? And so it's a fantastic position.
Do you
inhabit?
Kind of a weird thing. Do you know where he got the name Nightwing from?
Yeah, it's going to be Flamebird and Nightwing. It's a old Kryptonian legend.
It's so crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, his obsession with Superman, I think, is hilarious considering Batman and
he's
Superman's
probably like, why didn't Superman find me after my parents died?
He's always so excited when Clark's there, and Batman is so annoyed. I love that running gag.
I mean, I think it's so cool that they still found a way to tie Batman to Superman. Like, they're always going to be intertwined. And I mean, not a lot. I'm so glad you know that. Of course you would. It's your favorite character, but like, I just think it's so neat.
It could be wrong of me to say this, and I don't have the same extensive Bat knowledge as my two noble co-hosts. But I have to say, I would think that Batman at some level would want Dick to be more like Superman.
Oh, of course.
It's like that's the hero he wants him to be.
Monologue.
Yeah. So that's another. I mean, in that idea of like having a. And by the way, is he just straight up the son now? Like not
who?
I'm a little vague on this, so I'll ask this from an amateur perspective. Is Dick Grayson like is he adopted? Like where?
Yeah, Batman's his guardian.
Yeah, well, because I feel he was, I think, the last one to be adopted, and they made a big deal out of it. But the continuity is always always tripped me
because
up.
I know in the beginning it was like, oh, I'm your guardian now, and then there's some instances where Alfred was the adopted father.
It's so weird.
They're just the Bat family. Like it doesn't matter.
Like,
there's no paperwork involved.
He's still the mom Robin, still the older brother.
Like the application is if you can jump from one roof to the other, then it's like, yeah, you're part of the family. It's fine.
You're totally right, but I have to say, from just like putting my silly goggles on or whatever. I don't know. There's just this feeling of like he's your ward. And he's like, oh, he's the guy. It's like, why don't you just adopt me as your kid? Well, I don't know. I don't want to go. Like we're moving kind of fast.
I mean,
I think that was just the time and like kind of the verbiage that they used.
Yeah.
But I mean,
he has been adopted in some continuities.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think he's still the heir.
Yeah, Batman would say he's his son. Yeah. So I mean, he's his son.
Yeah.
He's
I appeal to Batman.
His parents are dead, judgment. So I mean, it doesn't mean Batman is there. Like,
fair enough.
My turn.
Who are you talking about, Noah? Finally, tell us.
The best character of all time.
Yeah, who's the character?
The most I wasn't unsure. I'm just very like.
Rewind to the beginning of this podcast when he was like, "I don't know who I'm going to."
No, like I knew who I was going to pick because there's always that one character that I'm like, oh, I love Doctor Strange. I love Midnighter. I love these characters. But the one, if anybody was to ask me, like, who's your favorite character? It's like, oh, it's the Flash. Like, I mean, always has to be the Flash. No matter what, like, if you've read Rebirth, I'm still sticking through that. Like, it's good, but it's not great. And I'm still reading it. I have all 6 volumes right now, and it's just now getting good. But anyway.
That's a great testament to loving a character is you're willing to read bad stories that they're in.
Well, because I know that they're going to get good, and I appreciate the character because I mean I don't know if you know about Flash, but Flash is the reason for the multiverse. Like I mean,
I don't know very much about Flash, so this is going to be very informative on my part.
DC unit multiverse or just the one we live in?
If it was the one we lived in, I would literally try to find out how to become a speedster.
I think that's what it says in your bio. You're constantly working.
Yes, I guess it's true. But no, the Flash, Barry Allen is my favorite speedster. I love Wally. First Wally, not new Wally, Iris's nephew. That gets really confusing. I mean, the Flash's family is a lot more confusing than most of the families out there because there's whole timey-wimey space time travel-y stuff.
Like, there's metaphysics involved.
I mean, it's very science-y based, which I like because that's where the character comes from. I mean, even it's a Jay Garrick. I mean, he was studying in that capacity as well. And fun fact, do you know how he got his powers?
No idea.
I do.
I gave you a look. I have no idea.
Yeah, because I thought it was ridiculous. He takes a smoke break while he's working on his stuff or whatever. And
so right there, pretty antiquated.
You could tell the time frame. I mean, this was like the 1940s or so. So I mean, everybody was smoking, doing whatever. But yeah, he was smoking, and the hard water molecules from whatever chemicals were on his desk got into the smoke and then got into his lungs. And that's how he became a speedster. Nobody understood what that meant. I mean, they just was like, yeah, I mean, hard water does that.
Can I just say, thank God that's what it was, because cigarettes were so popular at the time. We're lucky it wasn't just the cigarettes that gave him his power. It's just like, the cool smoothness of Winston's.
He kind of got his powers from cigarettes. But
crucial.
Yeah, I mean, and then you have Barry Allen that got his powers more understandably so. He's in the lab, he's a CSI, and lightning comes to the thing. Miraculously, chemicals, lightning. Yeah, I'm fast now.
It's like the perfect combination of chance and science.
Yeah, I mean, but you find out later, like, as they've written these stories over the years, that it wasn't by chance, it was supposed to happen, and you know, whenever Barry got struck by that lightning, it created the Speed Force throughout all of time and space. So even though it didn't exist prior to him, when he got struck by lightning and the Speed Force was created, it existed throughout all of time. And then they later kind of threw Jay in there that, like, that's where he gets his power from. And then you have Bart from the future. It's like, that's where he got his powers from. Like, they all have their powers connected to the Speed Force. And fun fact, Wally is a conduit for the Speed Force. So Wally was his pretty much first ward, his first Robin, if you will.
His sidekick.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a sidekick.
Kid Flash, right?
Yes, yeah. I mean, and then he became Flash after Crisis on Infinite Earths, when sadly Barry died, which is when I first started reading The Flash.
So your favorite character died in the issue that you started reading?
Yes.
Oh, no!
Because I thought it was just so cool, because you have this character that everybody's dying and all this stuff is happening, and you have this one character where you wouldn't think that his powers would save the day. And I mean, to the Animonitor of all people, I mean, back then he was the biggest bad, and he just ran really fast and took, his weapon, and no, didn't take his weapon, but took the core from the weapon, I believe it was. Like, he made it stop, but there's a panel where he's like disintegrating, and I just thought
that's traumatic.
Yeah, I mean, he was like, this guy sacrificed himself. And
how much Flash had you got into or read before you read?
So I had heard. I mean, I watched like the old, like Super Friends and like stuff like that, where like you kind of see him in spurts, and
he's running too fast.
Yeah, exactly. You don't see him that much.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I'd heard of him and I liked him, and then I started reading that, and I was like, oh, I really like this. And then I started reading Mark Waid writing Wally as Flash, and it didn't click in my head that I was reading Wally and not Barry.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Which, I mean, I loved Wally. I was like, this is great. And the funny thing is, so in the TV show, if you've watched it, how he's like, oh, my name's Barry Allen, I'm the fastest man alive. That came from Wally. And then they adopted it later on because Wally.
The fastest man alive.
Yeah, my name's Barry Allen. I'm the fastest man alive.
Gotcha.
Actually came from Wally, not Barry.
So who's the fastest man alive?
This is a big, not controversy, but like.
I mean, everybody kind of knows that Wally is faster. Like, he can be faster. I actually wrote down how fast he can go.
Yes.
Nerd.
It's in terms of raw speed.
It's
right?
about 24 tredecillion times the speed of light.
And that means nothing.
No, tredecillion is slightly more than 7.
Yeah, correct. I mean, it's a huge number.
It's a big number.
It's a giant number. And I mean, in the way that they kind of tell it that Barry's faster is because he has more experience. He was the first speedster. He created the Speed Force, but Wally's a conduit for the Speed Force. So he's just more naturally attuned to it. That's why he can go into the Speed Force and come out.
Yeah, so he has the potential to be faster.
Exactly. And he's done things that were just, unheard of. But Wally's been gone for a long time. Flash was gone for over 20 years. And it was just Wally. Gap. Yeah, because when he died in Crisis on Infinite Earths, a lot of people thought he was dead. Like, I mean, he just wasn't coming back because it was over 20 years. And then when Jeff Johns came back and started writing him in Rebirth, that's when he came back into the mainstream, which I really love. That comic is amazing. If you ever want to read Flash, read that one. I mean, like, to get you started, or Mark Waid, but it's not Barry Allen. But I did want to say a kind of crazy fact that I found out about Flash. I'm going to tell you a little story.
Oh,
story time.
Okay, so 2 pregnant women go into the office of Dr. Gilmore. He was drunk. What the fuck? He's drunk. A doctor at the office.
Oh, my.
And so he sent the nurses home because he was drunk.
No story that begins with a drunk doctor is ever going to be.
With 2 pregnant women in labor.
Yeah, here we go.
And what this doctor decided to do was to send his nurses home because he's like, oh, I'm drunk. I have to help give birth to these 2 pregnant women. Let me send my help away because that's just smart.
If they see me deliver these babies, they're going to know how drunk I am.
So the child of one of the women, Charlene Thawne.
So
Thawne, if you know anything from the Flash universe, Eobard Thawne, they're very much connected to these characters. Her baby was stillborn. They go into detail with this. Like, the cord was wrapped around its neck and it strangled itself. Yeah, very dark. And then the other woman, Nora Allen, successfully gave birth to twins. So let that sink in. So Thawne, baby stillborn. Nora Allen gave birth, but do you know of his twin brother?
I don't.
He has a twin brother. That this drunk doctor gave to Thawne and told Nora Allen that her other baby died in childbirth.
Whoa.
So this is Barry Allen and twin brother. We'll call Scary Allen.
Well, he gave one of the twins to the Thawne family.
Yeah. Wait, so Eobard Thawne
is related?
Is twin brothers with Barry Allen?
No, not Eobard Thawne. No, I haven't gotten there.
Okay.
Yeah. And also, he's from the future.
Yeah.
So how would that happen?
Clearly, I am barely understanding what's going on. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
So that baby was later named Malcolm. Do you know who Malcolm Thawne is?
No.
Okay, he became a villain of the Flash later on, named as Cobalt Blue.
Oh, I do know that. Okay.
Yeah, so I know of that character, and I never knew that it's actually the twin brother of Flash that was secretly given to the Thawnes because her real child died. And the doctor thought it was a good idea to be like, no, your other baby died. Your baby's fine. Like,
and then who is that? The grandfather of Eobard Thawne or something to that effect?
I mean, I don't.
They've got to be related, though, right?
The gist.
Yes, they're the Thawnes. Yeah, I mean, what other person has that name?
Yeah, it's a pretty specific name.
Yeah. And so did you also know that during Crisis on Infinite Earths that Marvel wanted to pay tribute to Barry Allen because they liked him, and back then there was no war between the two companies. So does the name Buried Alien mean anything to you?
Mm-mm.
So
the movie The Thing.
Quasar, the comics?
Yeah.
Yeah, so and Quasar number 17 issue dropping because
we are getting
specific
here, but that's great. Yeah, I love Quasar.
So what's it called? There was a character that appeared out of nowhere and he called himself Buried Alien.
Okay.
And he couldn't remember his name. He had tattered, a suit. It was, red and yellow, very much looking like somebody named Barry Allen. And he said, it's Buried Allen. That sounds familiar. So this guy runs into the Marvel universe, ends up winning a race against a bunch of other speedsters. So they don him the fastest man alive. Sound familiar? Yes. And he becomes Fast Forward. So Marvel, he died in the DC universe, but ran to the Marvel universe. And he doesn't know who he is.
Yeah.
But it's Barry Allen. They were just paying tribute to them. It's insane.
And his name was what?
Buried? Like, buried?
Yeah.
Alien.
No, but you said he became something. You said Fast Forward?
Fast Forward. He was only in those comics for maybe a few issues.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I thought it was
a beautiful story.
I know. Yeah.
Like the connection between Marvel and DC in the good old days.
They're so sweet.
Mm-hmm. And then one more fact thing.
Okay.
Because I thought this was crazy too. So the craziest death I've ever seen, one of the craziest deaths I've ever seen. So it was in issue number 0 in Future's End, which I didn't read a lot of that because that's when New 52 was happening and there was a bunch of like big story arcs going on. So 35 years in the future is when Future Ends happens. Most of everybody is dead. Brother I is the one that took over. You know how Brother I is. He likes to kill a lot of people. Okay. So Frankenstein has Black Canary's head surgically implanted into his chest.
Ew. What?
I'm not kidding. So has it surgically implanted in his chest. Flash is still around because he's super fast. And he uses Black Canary to just disintegrate Barry Allen. With Black Canary's face and
using
head.
her sonic scream.
Yeah, but it was implanted in his chest.
That's really sick.
That's really gross.
That's why I love the Flash because it's just ridiculous.
Summation.
Is this some? I think I missed it. Is this some like future?
It's Future End. It's like 35 years in the future where Brother I takes over and everybody's dead.
Very scary.
Yeah, I mean, I think. Those were kind of fun things I needed to tell people that didn't know about the Flash, and I found out while researching some things.
For this episode.
Yeah. Oh, also, the Flash can negate the anti-life equation.
That's a lot.
Yeah, and nobody knows why. Like, literally, when I was researching, like, his abilities and stuff, because he's a speedster, he can do all these types of things. Like, he can see probability, which means he can kind of see the future because he works out all the probabilities in his head, which they did in New 52 and then didn't really pick it back up. But anyway, yeah, he saves Iris West by negating the anti-life equation.
That's really
How does he do that? Doesn't explain it because comics. Because comics. Yeah, so speaking of fun facts, do you have any Thor man over here have any crazy
Don't
fun
let it
facts?
go to your head.
Yeah.
Pronounced Thorman. I have so many Thor.
Yeah, let's not do an hour long.
I'll whittle them down from 1012 to 3. The first one's just trivia. I just like it's a little piece of trivia. It's that Thor appeared the same month as The Amazing Spider-Man.
Okay.
Interesting.
August 1962. They both came out. They're both fantastic characters. I think it's right when Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko were just hitting their stride, and yeah, it's just amazing stuff. That's my first fun fact. A lot of people know that though. And then these next two things aren't so much trivia as things that I feel like people don't know about the character generally. I mentioned one before, but I'll just go into it a little bit, which is just that Thor's mom is Gaia. But moreover, that's the explanation for his strength. So because he's the son of both Asgardian god and an elder goddess, and their combination is what makes him so really awesome. Okay. And then the third one, and I think this is one of the coolest parts of Thor that hasn't really made it to the larger adaptations like the movies and stuff like that, which is that he has two goats. Tooth
Gnasher and
so they're like pets?
Tooth Grinder. They are pets. They are so much. So they
wait. So what were their names again?
So here's what's interesting. Their names in Old Norse are Tangrisnir and Tangenjaster.
You're pretty good at that in like Norse pronunciation.
You just pretend vowels don't exist.
I mean, he talks like that normally.
But in the comic books, and that translates in English to Tooth Gnasher. Right, or tooth bearer, right, and tooth grinder.
How do you tooth gnash?
So gnashing your teeth is kind of like showing your teeth like a baboon, like. Yes, you bare
the more you know.
I thought that was more of an action.
It does.
Description.
It's what happens in hell. Apparently, I was like, people gnashing their teeth
anyway. With goats.
So it's these two goats. They're magical, powerful goats, and in Norse mythology, they. Thunder is actually supposed to be the sound of the hooves of Thor's goats pulling him across the sky on his chariot.
Oh,
that's the kind of
did not know
why goats.
It isn't from what I understand. It's not really clear. I mean, they're
maybe whoever made Thor was like a goat farmer.
It's possible. Maybe it's because they're ornery or something like that.
They have horns, so it's kind of cool.
And in the comics, they've become kind of like.
One of them died recently, didn't they?
Yes. Well, who knows what's going to happen? Let me get to it because Mangog actually kills one. It might not come back. So in mythology, the power that they bestowed upon Thor is he could kill them and eat their flesh, and they would always regenerate if he didn't break their bones.
I'm making a very horrified face right now.
Now, what's really cool is every once in a while, especially in like big moments or in the comic book character or comic book writers that have put a greater mythological spin on it, you get to see Thor with Tooth Grinder and Tooth Gnasher. And also, for some reason, it's so they don't say Tangrisnir or Tangenjaster.
Yeah, because nobody would know how to say that.
Probably, but it's one of the rare occasions in Thor comics where they do just do the translation, because like Mjolnir means the crusher, but they don't just call it the crusher or whatever. So it's one they were like, nah, we're just gonna go straight up with the names.
No, because they're also kind of cool.
Yes, Tooth Gnasher, Tooth Grinder.
Yeah.
So I want more goat action in the next Thor movie, and now that I've said that, I realize it doesn't sound appropriate.
Nope.
So what about Mrs. Nightwing?
Well, for casual fans, fun facts. I only have two. That Dick Grayson has been engaged twice in the comics. And, of course, the first time was with Starfire.
I knew that
his longtime girlfriend at the time. And the next one was Barbara Gordon, the original Batgirl. Oh. My favorite Batgirl.
I forgot about her.
Yes. Well, they're the romance that keeps on going.
Yeah.
They obviously, he's not married to Barbara right now. They called off the engagement, although Dick still has the ring in his possession with the promise of asking again one day. So while in the comics, Starfire is like this whirlwind romance that lasted a long time, he's kind of made it clear that he no longer feels that way about Starfire.
Mm-hmm.
Barbara Gordon is still kind of like an ongoing thing.
Oh, that's interesting. I completely forgot about Batgirl and him, because now in the comics they're just so offset. And
he has that
age.
weakness for redheads.
Yeah. True. And it feels very Marianne Ginger. Yeah. By the way, very Betty Veronica.
I mean, if I'm Team Starfire. Like if I had to pick, I would.
I like Barbara.
I'm Team Babs.
I mean, I love the character, but I don't know. Just now, I don't see it now. Like back then, yeah.
Yeah.
Pre-Oracle, but
I'm Barbara also pretty laid back with the whole thing because she's like, I studied so hard and I became, and you're gonna go off with that alien whore. Is that
she's not a whore? How dare you?
Look at
edit that part out.
Yeah, just
people are gonna egg your house.
I'm sorry I called her an alien. Go. Sorry.
I don't know. I think Dick, within the Bat family makes more sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Second fun fact was that Dick's parents left a trust fund to Lucius Fox, like the Bruce's business
tech
partner.
Guy.
Yes. That turned into a small fortune over time. So like how he's funding the Nightwing stuff, how he bought Haley's circus back and all of that, he's using his own family's money. And I don't know why that didn't click into my brain until I was doing research.
I thought it was just Bruce.
Yeah, exactly. Because Bruce did make him an heir. All of the Robins are probably going to inherit billions.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know that on principle, when he became Nightwing and all of that stuff, he was using his own family's money because they made a really smart investment with Lucius Fox.
Interesting. But that's weird, though. Like, why would they do it with Lucius? Like, how did they know he would be connected to Bruce? Comics.
Cool.
That's comics.
Fun facts.
Yeah. That's very interesting.
Okay, so it's pretty clear. Now we got Thor, obviously, Flash, Nightwing. But, you earlier, you alluded to there was like, I had to really work about who's going to be my favorite. So if you had to pick your second favorite, so everybody go around just real quick. You don't have to talk about it that much, but if you had to
I
pick.
think this is harder for me.
In a weird way, it is, because you walk around with like, this is who's on my lunchbox or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, because like the favorite is the one that like, no matter what they do, I always love them. And like, once you get past that, you're like, oh, well, and this
is like
comic,
your other child that you
but,
don't love as much.
Yeah, but I mean, everybody has a favorite. Like, all parents. I'm not my parents' favorite.
You're like, I'm better for it. I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, there's 6 of us. Like, I got to anyway.
I'm not my parents' favorite either.
Sorry, Mom.
And I am an only child.
Yeah, you're an only child.
Yeah, they're still holding out.
Zing.
Yeah, but I think my favorite. Oh man. It would probably have to be Doctor Strange. I love Doctor Strange so much. Stephen Strange is so cool. And having Benedict Cumberbatch play him in the movies made me love him even more because, it's Benedict Cumberbatch and Doctor Strange. It feels like it's kind of like the Robert Downey Jr. thing. Yeah. Where like Robert Downey Jr. kind of made Iron Man. And I feel like Benedict Cumberbatch is really doing that to the character.
We can talk more about it later, but it's such a good point because it feels like there is, you have the Golden Age and Silver Age and the Modern Age, the Bronze Age, all this kind of stuff. I think there's going to be a post-movies age where those characters that are written on the page have so obviously been informed by the movies that were just massively successful or whatever.
That kind of ties perfectly into, like, my battle for which one took second place, took the silver. The easy answer would be Tony Stark, but I feel like Daredevil probably, Matt Murdock. And it has to do a lot with Charlie Cox's interpretation of that character.
So you started liking the character more once you saw it on screen.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. I know, it's kind of odd to...
But a fantastic interpretation.
No, but I think that...
both of your second ones are, by the way.
Yeah, I've heard
You approve of Daredevil and Doctor Strange?
No, I'm saying both of them are post particular interpretation on screen.
Yeah, well, I always liked Doctor Strange. He wasn't like necessarily my favorite, but I think it was the movies that kind of like, this guy is really cool. And like I had started kind of reading it and he wasn't in the comics that much.
It's true.
Up until he got a movie and then Jason Aaron, again, name dropping, but he started his own series with him, which didn't do that well. But
my experience with Doctor Strange is back before the movie. What made him so current all the time, or like where he would appear, is every character has like a magic issue, an issue where something mystical is going on, and if that happens, Thor too. What was I thinking? Doctor Strange would have to show up. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So,
yeah.
He's always had that.
He's still a doctor. He's like the doctor of all things magical.
Yeah, absolutely. And Daredevil, with if you have like some parking tickets, you had to get down. Obviously, Daredevil's amazing, great character. I also had a battle in my head, and I still always do, and it's because they're really the same character in a lot of ways. Are
you going to say Thor again?
No, it's double Thor. It's
what is it?
Thor.
Donald Blake or whatever? You can't use his human alter ego.
It's Beta Ray Bill, which is just a horse-faced Thor. It's like Thor and his goats had a baby and had no.
My God.
Yeah, it's gross. Yeah, everything I've said is gross.
We're gonna edit that out.
Well, make it louder than the. Okay, anyway. No, it's Submariner, Namor the Submariner, or Aquaman.
Interesting.
And the reason I say it's hard to pick is because it seems clear to me, I've never heard this confirmed, I've told Noah this before, that writers would, if they had a Submariner story, but they were working for DC at the time, they would just make it an Aquaman story and vice versa, because both of the characters go back and forth between either being this sort of regal, trying to make the relationship between the sea and the land work, or being like an environmental terrorist that hates the surface world. They've had both in. And I think I have to say Aquaman. It's so hard. It tears my heart.
I think you made the right choice.
Okay,
I'm sure you do.
DC bias.
No,
leaking
it's
in.
no. I know. I just think personally, because I've told you this, and I'm sure when the movie comes out, we'll talk about it. But Mira is what really makes Aquaman for me, because she's such a standout. I'm not even going to call her. She's not a sidekick. Like, I mean, she is like
a partner. She's like not in the same way that Loki and Thor are
exactly.
adversarial, but it's a certain way where she's become very crucial to that character. And it's true that Namor doesn't have a love interest that has the same level of impact. I will say,
or that could hit that hard.
That's true. I think on some level, the way they're written now for the last 20 years, Namor ends up being more of like a kind of the bad boy kind of volatile character. But I got to go with Aquaman. Not just because the run on him since Rebirth, I think, has just been amazing. Actually, even before that, what's the New 52 and been fantastic.
It's great.
But he's also got a trident and blonde hair, and blonde characters with antiquated weaponry are just my favorites. So.
I guess that's a common theme.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so if a if a person had to get into comics for your favorite character, what issues would you recommend? Let's go with Flash Kid over there.
Yeah. Oh, man. This is kind of hard because...
you don't have to do issues necessarily.
Oh, no. I wasn't going to do issues.
Or like arcs.
You could. Yeah, either way. Yeah.
I mean, I would definitely say Mark Waid's run on Wally was... I mean, that's what did it for me. That's what, made me, without realizing at some points that this isn't Barry. Because, that's right. He died in Crisis on Infinite Earths.
I love that your recommendation is like, don't read about Barry Allen, though. Read about Wally to love Barry.
It's a good way to get introduced, because it's just like Batman. He has his own family and his own gallery of rogues, literally. No, but I would say, so Mark Waid's run on that, definitely Jeff Johns' Rebirth. I mean, not the actual, universe restarting Rebirth, but it's just called Flash Rebirth. It is amazing. That's when he came back into the mainstream. And then definitely New 52. I mean, I think just start with, trade number 1 and go from there. The Rebirth is okay. I think you should read those to build up a tolerance for kind of the craziness and bad stories that happen in Flash Rebirth. It's definitely getting better.
As they do.
7 issues in, but it's getting better.
Yeah.
That's what I would recommend.
And you, Thor Boy.
Heck yeah. Which is going to be my name on the podcast now.
Change it in the bio.
It's really cool that we get to do this, by the way, just because I feel like not every episode we're going to have the same level of personal authority to be like, this is what you should read. But we love these characters so much, we can actually do it this time. And there's so much good and bad with Thor. There's low points and high points. I'm going to do classic, new, and obscure.
Okay.
Classic, you can't mention Thor without mentioning Walt Simonson. Or Simonson, however you want to pronounce it. I just don't know how. I've only seen it written down. I don't mean that his name is a special kind.
Did you say Walt or Simon?
No. So it's Walter, or also just Walt Simonson or Simonson. I'm not really sure. Okay, yeah.
So the last name, not
yeah,
the
yes. But either way, it's like you can pronounce it however you like. It's anyway. But.
So any of his runs.
So he has at this point, it's so classic. It's one of the, it's like Frank Miller's Daredevil, or really at this point Jeff Johns' Green Lantern, Jeff Johns' Flash. it's just one of those like great runs in comic books. And so they've put them together. They've done like the essential, I think 1 through 5 graphic novels or a giant omnibus. Anyway, the whole thing is a fantastic epic, and it really brought Thor back to life. But also it re-embraced the mythological roots of the character. Originally that character was sort of more of like a space man with energy powers? What they were kind of on the fence. This was like, no, he's the Norse god of thunder. Anyway, really great stuff. I can see you're bored. Anyway, no, it's fine.
What? Noah hating on mythology?
Yeah. No, you're fine. And then the second recommendation, Thor, God of Thunder. And it's basically Jason Aaron's run. That specifically, it was with, like I said, Jason Aaron and Esad Ribic, the artist. And if you want to check out any of Jason Aaron's Thor, including the Jane Thor stuff, I have to say it from my
I mean, I was not a Thor fan until I read that.
Yeah.
And it's not about Thor. It's about Jane. But I mean, he's in it, but it's so good.
Yeah. But the first one for me, my recommendation, Thor, God of Thunder. This does feature the original God of Thunder, and it's really, really good. I think you'll really like it. But any of Jason Aaron's stuff. And then the last one, this is a bit of a deep cut, but it's really, really good. It's Avengers Disassembled Thor. It's written by Michael A. Van Oming, and what's so fantastic about it is that so much of Norse mythology, and translated in the comics, is about Ragnarok, the time when all the Norse gods die, and really an end of the world and its rebirth. So this is a masterful writer taking on, there's about 7 issues, I think, collected of the story of Ragnarok. It's as epic as Thor comics get, and I think you'll love it. So check it out.
What about Mrs. Grayson?
I feel like I'm going to keep it as simple as possible. For a complete understanding of Nightwing, I would just go to the New 52, start from the beginning for Nightwing. He also has, again, my favorite, Dick Grayson's, was interacting with the family. So other 2 recommendations would be Battle for the Cows, a little bit older. But so good. I love it. It's good for all of the Robins, but one of the focus is like Dick trying to come to terms with the fact that he has to maybe pick up the mantle now that Bruce is missing/dead.
And this is after Final Crisis.
Yeah. And then Batman New 52, because the beginning, the first story arc, which I love, is the Court of Owls, and he plays a very important part in that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's fantastic. There's an animated movie, too. I don't think it does it complete justice, but it is. I think
I like DC animated movies.
Oh, no. So. I mean, they're fantastic, but there's just like any movie, you're going to miss some things.
From someone who hasn't read it yet. I will read it
before
we do an episode. I'm going to read it. But I thought the animated thing was great.
Yeah, because you watched the animated. I made you watch it because, I mean, it's just really good. It's just like Under the Red Hood. And like, I mean, Batman's knocking it out of the park with the animated movies.
Yeah, absolutely. So check Batman Under the Red Hood as well, because it's so goddamn good. And actually, Nightwing is really good in it. But,
yeah, that is true.
Thanks for listening. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at the FANtom Zone Pod for more podcast updates. What I love about the idea of being able to talk about our favorite characters.
What?
It's that it gets contagious. Like when you're really passionate about something, it catches fire and then soon everyone is passionate about it. So honestly, the real reason I'm doing this podcast is to indoctrinate more people into being Dick Grayson fans.
You're like an evangelical Dick Grayson fan.
Okay, I don't like the...
You're one step closer to just going on people's doors and just
handing out flyers.
Or just handing them single issues of a Dick Grayson comic.
Issues! I like that idea. That's so smart.